Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Marissa Kozlov. It's great to have you with us for today's eMarketer Tech Talk, where we host guests from all areas of media, ad tech, and martech. Today, we'll cover best practices to accelerate and simplify your marketing content with generative AI and intelligent automation. Really excited for this one. Now, let's meet my guest who is joining us today from New York. We have Bruce Richards, Head of Industry Strategy and Marketing for Consumer Goods at Adobe. Bruce, great to have you here.
Hey Marissa, great to be with you, and I'm glad to hear that you're excited about content and Gen AI. It's the hottest topic of the day, so I'm glad to be with you guys and talk to the audience about this today.
Yeah, it is absolutely a hot topic on everyone's mind. Actually, we were just talking about it at lunch before the webinar today. So it is a really hot topic. Looking forward to this. And I know our audience is excited. And I want to remind them that you will be sticking around for a live Q&A in the second part of the show. So to our audience, please keep it conversational with us. Just use that chat window on the right to tell us not only where you're joining us from today, we'd love to know, and to submit those questions for Bruce. We will do our best to get to as many of your live questions as we can during the Q&A. So please keep those coming. All right, we have great content planned for you today. Bruce, let's get started.
Yeah, let's do it. So, let's start by talking about the content landscape in general. So, things are changing rapidly and often faster than marketers can keep up with. In retail and consumer goods, content doubled over the 2022 and 2023 period, and practitioners in these industries are expecting a 5x multiplier by the end of this year. So if you think about it, it doubled in a 2-year period. Now we're looking at 5 times that by the end of 2024. And we were talking about this a couple of months ago, and the end of 2024 seems so far away. It's not so far away anymore, and meeting those content demands is going to be considerably challenging. This incredible rapid growth is due to a number of different things. The first one is what I call the Great Digital Migration, or also known as COVID. In the blink of an eye, everything that we knew went digital. And as the craziness settled down, most of the digital behavior stuck, which led to increased content needs. So it's a little bit of a balancing that we're seeing right now, especially in retail and consumer goods, where people are looking for a combination of physical and digital, but there's still a ton of digital parts of the journey that consumers and customers are taking part in that's requiring content. And in that context, consumers are also demanding more and more personalization, which requires more content. And with the need for personalization comes the need for speed. So brands are expected to react in real time, and content has to be at the ready. And then we look at channel expansion and the ways in which consumers interact with brands continuing to change. And journeys we see are not linear anymore. They're interacting with brands in different ways. So you don't know where they are. You don't know when to talk to them. So you, again, have to have content at the ready, and that requires more content in your queue so that you can meet those personalization and speed demands that the customers are asking you for. So, let's take a look at a real life example of this skyrocketing demand. This is a real example of an Adobe customer, and you can see how the simple math plays out, right? For example, this brand has 1,000 products, and they need 10 assets for every product just to have different variations. So that's 10,000 assets that they need. And once you look at granular customer segments and contexts within their journeys, the number can balloon to millions. So this brand in particular has to plan, create, manage, share, activate, and store at least a minimum of 200,000 plus assets at any given time. And this creates really complex internal processes. So there is a real urgency for brands to look at their content supply chains and make adjustments quickly. And what's happening is industry leaders are really taking note. Nearly 3/4 of retailers agree that optimizing their content supply chain is a strategic priority. And by strategic priority, it doesn't just mean it's living within a certain part of their world. It's a business priority. It's strategic across all of their business. So it's right up there with all of the other strategic priorities that they're talking about. Content is one of them. 64% told us that they're seeing increased revenue from a more efficient content supply chain. So where they've been able to make some changes and create some efficiencies, they're getting more revenue because they're able to address those personalization needs that I talked about a minute ago. And now with Gen AI rapidly moving to center stage in almost every content conversation, leaders are realizing that avoidance, translates into loss of strategic advantage over the competition. So leaders are really standing up and taking notice of the need to address this now. And as much as they're prioritizing their content supply chains, they're also running into some really significant challenges in achieving success, mostly because what they already have in place is severely broken and does not infiltrate every aspect of their business. I speak to a lot of industry leaders on this topic, and by far, when I bring up this slide, every single time I get a knowing smile or a head nod from a few people in the room. This visual resonates, and it accurately depicts what marketing leaders are dealing with in varying degrees. We call this the spaghetti mess. And with this mess comes undeniable challenges related to content. When you have this many people and no real process in place, brand standards are at risk, reviews and approvals take forever, regulatory and compliance issues come up, finding assets is challenging, and forget about reusing them. It's nearly impossible. So you can't find them to reuse them. It's a big problem. And as a result, you have little to no idea how your assets are performing and what your marketing ROI is. So if you come back to that 5x multiplier that I mentioned a few minutes ago, 2024, 5 times what they ended 2023 with. Marketers have to be asking themselves a lot of really difficult questions. And to be honest, they should be, because if they are looking to have 5 times more digital assets than they did at the end of last year, they have to be looking for bottlenecks. They have to be asking themselves, how long are things taking to get done and what are they costing? Every single marketer that I talk to says, I need to do more with less. How do I do that in a world where my content is exploding? Am I getting the most out of what I produce? This speaks to the reuse issue I talked about a minute ago. What is my return on investment? Is what I produce actually performing for me? And as they're searching for answers to these questions, they now have to navigate this whole complex world of Gen AI. They thought they were dealing with a very different thing in 2022, 2023. Now they're layering on Gen AI on top of that. This really has been a seismic shift for industries like retail and consumer goods, who rely so heavily on content to present their brands to their consumers. So, and yes, I use the word seismic. I'm in New York. I had the earthquake a couple of weeks ago, so I'm allowed to use that word. In fact, I'm going to use it twice. Adobe really saw this seismic shift in content creation come early, and we developed Firefly. So Firefly is our new family of creative generative AI models that offer new ways to ideate, create, communicate, all while significantly improving creative workflows. And Firefly is really different in the marketplace. It's designed to be commercially safe. So it's trained on over 300 million high-quality Adobe stock images. It's embedded in the tools that creative professionals are already using, like Creative Cloud Express and other Adobe tools. And it drives integrated workflows so you can speed content production, fuel efficiency gains, and we're starting with text to image capabilities and text to effects capabilities and building out from there. And I'll take you through some examples as I go through this presentation of what these use cases look like right now. Firefly is also built to be enterprise friendly. We've been exploring ways to enable customers to train Firefly with their own creative collateral to generate brand content through custom models and APIs. This is huge. In fact, custom models, a feature within Firefly services, was announced at Adobe Summit a few weeks ago. So the ability to build custom models is there, it's GA, and it's exciting. So there's a lot of buzz and excitement about what's happening within Firefly and the tools. So hope that gives you a sense of where we are. So I've talked about a lot of things, the landscape, what the industry looks like, the challenges that we face, the things that Adobe is doing to help address those challenges. And what we've done is we've built this powerful vision to unlock the content supply chain and enable marketers to scale content at lower costs. So our vision is about moving from manual process to an AI-first world where creatives and marketers have what we call co-pilots for their work, and manual tasks now become automated. We want to move from siloed teams and tools and data to connected flows. We want to move from few content creatives in the world of marketing to a world where everyone is empowered to create on-brand content. And finally, we want to move from a state where content creation and content spend has been in a black box to one where the process is transparent, the spend is transparent, and tools are enterprise safe and trusted. And the way that we do that is by relying on these 5 building blocks that you see outlined here. So we have asset management in the middle, and surrounding asset management, because the management of all the assets is really the crux of what we're talking about here. It's content supply chain. But directly related to that building block is workflow and planning, creation and production, delivery and activation, reporting and insights. So these are the building blocks that we're hanging our content supply chain story on, if you will.
Bruce, I love the visual that you have there of all of those building blocks. How does the content supply chain fit into Adobe's overall personalization at scale positioning? That was just a question that I had after seeing that.
Yeah, and it's a great question, because Adobe has been a huge proponent of personalization at scale in the retail and consumer goods industries, and we're working very closely with some of the biggest brands in the world on how they're personalizing their experiences for their consumers. And one of the things that we talk about is how consumers don't buy products, they buy experiences. So brands better get that right. And what we do at Adobe is we have 3 pillars that support the personalization at scale initiative, if you will. The first one is data and insights. The second one is content supply chain. And the third one is journey orchestration. And if you think about it, it's great to have all the data and insights in the world, but if you don't have the content to deliver on those data and insights, which means content has to be personalized as well, you're not in a great place, because what good is all the data if you can't have the content to meet it? And all of that content and data then feeds the journey orchestration part of it. So without that content supply chain running efficiently, you're kind of missing the boat on both sides of it. And it's really interesting to see, today we're talking about retail and consumer goods, right? Retail, they've had their data houses in order for many years. They run their businesses on what they know about their customers from a transactional perspective. And now they're just building up the content supply chain to meet that and move forward. In consumer goods, they have to do both of them in parallel, because when, I talked about that digital migration, that's when all consumers really started to flood to branded sites, consumer goods brand sites, for information and sort of building relationships with consumer goods brands. So consumer goods are now building out their data capabilities at the same time they're building out the content capabilities. So the complexities are different, and in my opinion, a bit greater on the consumer goods side of the business. Okay, so great question, Marissa. Thank you for asking that. So let's dig into each one of the building blocks that I just outlined. First, we have workflow and planning. So this is a huge area of opportunity for retailers and consumer goods, as an overwhelming majority tell us that visibility across their enterprise is a huge challenge. And current work management tools are antiquated. They're working with Excel spreadsheets. They're using email to communicate. All the things that we tell people not to do, that's what's living live in these organizations. So with Adobe, we're looking to help them streamline their workflows and planning and enhance the efficiency of content-related projects and campaigns by providing end-to-end views of project work, expediting the review and approval processes, and automating processes that should have been automated years ago. So this is where you can start to see some of the tools that we have at play. So here's an example in a campaign management environment within Adobe Workfront. So campaign management is complex and often requires input from a lot of different stakeholders throughout the organization. A holistic view empowers the team to navigate the complexities of campaign management with confidence. So what you're seeing here is how a marketer can help unlock end-to-end visibility into operations and then drive business improvement. So she's clicking through and she can see a comprehensive view of all campaign components. She can filter to identify projects at risk. Then she identifies areas that require attention and either allocate resource support to get things moving or initiate a conversation to plan a new approach. And at the same time, every stakeholder is in the loop. So this enhances risk management, streamlines timelines, and promotes prompt, punctual deliveries. If someone knows that they're in here and they can see that something they were supposed to do didn't get done, all of a sudden it's flagged and people know about it. So you don't want to be on that flagged list, right? And then it optimizes resource allocation. So all available resources and where they're currently deployed is included here. So a manager who can go in and see it, see where something's delayed, and deploy a new resource against that initiative. And here you can see how Workfront integrates with other tools like Frame.io, Creative Cloud, and AEM assets. So creatives spend a lot of their time on non-creative tasks. For most of them, the review and approval process takes a lot of time, since there's often a patchwork of tools for collaboration, work in progress, reviews, transfers, approvals. It's never one solution. It's all different pieces that are cobbled together. So by bringing everything and everyone together in one place, brands can reduce the number of review cycles, speed up approvals, make feedback more specific and actionable, and overall fast track the delivery of that asset to market. So, for example, here, the creative director, Morgan, and it's, yeah, okay, good, it's flipping through now. Morgan initiates a formal review and approval. Approvers like Kimberly, the VP of Marketing, will receive an email notification indicating that that asset requires her review. And once all the approvers follow the link in the email, they can add comments, compare old and current visions of the asset side by side, adjust the approval status, and once approved, the asset becomes available in the DAM for downstream activation. So this is where it all comes together in one place versus creatives having to go to 6, 8, 10 different places in order to get something approved and through the cycle. Okay, now let's talk about how you can unlock your creative team's productivity by enabling them to do a few things. Automate work processes, run better creative review processes, and generate brand compliant content. We know that on average, creatives are wasting over 20 hours a week on tasks that could be automated. And with more than 60% saying that they're moving work in-house, finding ways to be more efficient is becoming a priority. So let's take a closer look at this mini demo. GenAI helps create consistent look and feel in relation to existing product photos and images, and it fully harmonizes tones, color, lighting, textures between the backgrounds and the image in the foreground. So here you see AI-generated backgrounds using text prompts. So look in the center of that screen. You see where it says white product stand surrounded by foliage? AI generated 3 options based on a text prompt. So someone typed in white product stand surrounded by foliage, and that's what Gen AI delivered, was those 3 different options. So the creative team can dynamically insert the can visual into each and determine which one they want to use. But all of them are in the desired style and theoretically can be used in different formats and still be cohesive visually and on brand for a particular campaign if they needed more than one visual or they wanted to do different cans and different backgrounds. There's a ton of value to be derived here. It can take up to 12, it can be up to 12 times faster to create assets like this, so that you'll end up with higher throughput, and brand standards are more controlled, and with speed comes cost savings. So faster, brand standards in check, and you save money doing it this way. Scaling assets, and this one is not running. Give me a second, let me get this. Okay, scaling assets. Scaling into various formats to accommodate different devices and channels and campaign extensions is one thing we hear creative teams struggle with a lot. It's time consuming, it's mundane, it takes them away from what they really want to do, which is create. So now with Firefly Services, they can access over 20 powerful generative and creative APIs, tools, and services that eliminate the manual and repetitive tasks creative teams currently perform to power localization and personalization efforts. This includes everything from resizing assets for different channels, generating and expanding backgrounds for merchandising and e-commerce, replacing scenery and language for localization. And all of these capabilities are embedded into Adobe's Creative Cloud applications, and they can also be integrated into any production or experience workflow. So creatives can scale the production of asset variations very quickly with the tools that they're already using. There we go. Okay. Just bear with me as I click through these because some of the visuals are taking long to load. And as creative teams adjust priorities to meet shifting demands, they're on to other things once a project is created. It's really important to empower your marketing teams to create and publish content without waiting for your creative teams, particularly for lower tier assets. So if you think about it, you know, your marketing team has to make a quick on-the-fly change to something, and it could take an inordinate amount of time because they have to go back to the creative team to get it done. Now they can just go in and do it themselves because the standards have been set up. So with Express, Firefly, and AEM assets, marketing teams can create consistent branded content quickly and easily. So what happens is the creative team set up brand compliant templates using the company's fonts, colors, logos, and marketers that can then select and populate templates using Gen AI models that allow them to generate high quality, ready to share custom images and text effects. So your marketing team now can directly access the assets stored in the DAM from within their preferred user interface, and then they save edited content back to the DAM. So completely democratizes their ability to do their work. And you can see what's happening here in this visual is the user is going through, and it's a little bit further along than I am in my talk track, but what's happening is they went in and they chose a previously populated background from the templates. Here, it's going to start over. Here we go. So they're going to go in here. They're going to choose the background. So the ones that will come up on the left are the ones that Gen AI, that the creatives created. So they choose one, and then they start to populate it with other visuals from the DAM, and they start to use previously approved font capabilities to create an ad and actually publish it. So, I mean, this is a complete game changer. Without having to wait to go back to creatives, you can utilize the tools that they've already gone forward with. Another one, being able to create photorealistic product images that minimize the need for CAD imaging and or photo shoots. This one's game changing. Here you can see how the user starts with a product model created in our Substance 3D solution and uses AI to create the exact material and texture identical to the actual product. So in this case, it's water drops on an aluminum can. Then they iterate on the color scheme, and then the product can be rendered at any angle, from facing front, facing sideways, placed in a different environment like on a table or in the woods, just like a photo shoot. But here it's all happening in real time in Gen AI. So you can see one color scheme moving to the next and then dropping it into the background. And it's literally happening at this speed. This is a real user interface that, that our teams were able to pull together. All right, moving on to asset management. So think about the stats on the bottom left of this slide. More than 3/4 of retailers and consumer goods companies cannot find and store assets. That's why asset management was in the middle of that building block visual that I showed earlier. And more than half of the assets created are never used. More than half. I found those numbers absolutely astonishing in a world that is quickly moving to digital first. So with Adobe, you can make your marketing teams more agile by empowering them to easily create new brand compliant content, quickly edit existing brand assets, and generate size and language variations of approved assets. Let's take a closer look at how marketing teams can achieve these outcomes. So here, having the right metadata attached to the assets in the DAM helps improve discoverability. I just told you, the majority can't find them. So it improves discoverability, reuse, and consistency across online properties. So using integrated tools like Adobe Assets lets brands implement a clear metadata strategy using smart tags to ensure that the right information is attached to the right asset. Team members can easily update and swap images to fit their needs, and establishing the right asset management foundation and enabling your organization to reuse your created, purchased, and acquired assets has enormous value. So, when I talked about getting creatives back to what they really love to do, which is create, they don't want to be tagging things with metadata. So smart tags, it gets creatives, it makes creatives so happy because they wait, I don't have to do this anymore. We talk to creatives in the market all the time, says, I just don't do it. That's why things get lost. That's an incredible thing that we're now making creative teams far more able to deploy smart tags and make their assets findable. And this increases their content and marketing ROI by reducing the cost per asset. If you make that 50% more accessible and findable, suddenly your cost per asset and the reusability is in a good place. And it improves operational efficiency, and it achieves a faster speed to market. Because if you know where things are and you can get them into your marketing and advertising quicker, suddenly you're in market quicker and you see the results. We've already talked about customer expectations. They want personalization. It's no surprise. But what's pretty surprising is how fast they'll walk away from your site. 3/4 of the consumers we talk to are gone if load time exceeds 4 seconds. 4 seconds. I mean, they're not even giving you, that's so unreasonable. But yeah, 4 seconds and they're walking away. So clearly, delivering and activating in near real time is a consumer mandate. And Adobe can help your teams drive seamless delivery and activation and speed that load time by accelerating asset deployment through AI metadata indexing, swiftly creating and updating site experiences with integrated authoring, seamlessly testing and modifying marketing copy variations, and providing robust content performance measurements. So let's take a look at a couple of quick demos there. So ensuring the website is optimized with the latest content is critical for retailers and consumer goods brands. So using edge delivery tools, the website team can easily update content and images at any time outside of their CMS system. So this means they can work in tools they're familiar with, like Microsoft Word, and still preview and deliver experiences instantly to the live web page. So suddenly you're not waiting for all of this programming to happen to update the page. It can happen on the fly using edge delivery. Creating or updating the site experience can be tedious and really requires developer support. This takes that away, but we want to provide flexibility of authoring by removing the learning curve and onboarding needed to create, test, and update the site experience. So what this does is it democratizes content creation and helps teams achieve faster authoring and delivery of the experience, more efficient and less costly development cycles, and higher customer engagement and impacts. Okay, this is a cool one too. Creating updating, and modifying copy, whether it's for email, new marketing campaigns, or sites. This is where brands can do that. Gen AI can help draft and change the tone of marketing copy to meet different needs. And here's a look at how a business can create copy quickly and, with the customer in mind, edit an existing web page by selecting parameters like tone of voice, keywords that they should include, things like that. And the results will include the original version and the generative AI alternative. So you can select variations to publish and test engagement across segments or channels based on what gets published. You can try different versions and see what performs best. And this happens as quickly as what you're seeing on this visual demonstration. Strong copy assists the performance of campaigns. So we want to help marketers generate, test, and deploy as many versions of marketing copy as they want. And we're using Gen AI to allow businesses to craft messages that achieve faster time to market and higher customer engagement and conversion. And this is our last building block. Well, Gen AI has been the hot topic of conversation lately. I think part of every single conversation I have, measurement is a fast second. More and more brands want and need to know what's working and what's not. Gone are the days where brands just measured the success of an overall campaign or a marketing initiative. Now, knowing the impact of a particular asset and what that's having within the context of a campaign is quickly becoming mandatory. So like I just said, if you're able to quickly build and test different copy elements within the context of the same overall campaign and know what's performing better, how great is that versus knowing that just overall the campaign did well? Because then you could take your learnings from that copy change and that copy test and apply them to new initiatives and make sure that you're speaking to this segment in the tone that they expect to be spoken to. But when you consider the fragmentation of media and proliferation of things like retail media networks, it's really becoming challenging. So measurement is not only, a fast follower to Gen AI in the conversation, but people are actively looking for solutions. So what Adobe can give customers is a comprehensive view of content performance and provides brands valuable opportunities to make sure that the content that they create is speaking to the right audience, both visually and from a copy perspective. So by looking at sub-attributes of different pieces of content, top-performing themes can emerge to inform future creative choices. And this gives your teams the tools to measure content performance, maximize content ROI, refine content strategies, and significantly improve time to insight. The faster you know what's working and what's not, the faster you can make change within your processes. Adobe is working with a lot of customers in the retail and consumer goods spaces. And I just wanted to highlight some of the examples and some of the success stories, if you will, that we're looking at here. So in the retail space, we look at increasing asset reuse. I won't go through all of these. I'll just go through a few. Asset reuse, very important. I already told you, people can't find them. No less can they reuse them. We work with a multinational sports and apparel retailer that improved their reuse capabilities through metadata tagging, and they saw a 30% reduction in waste through increased asset reuse. So, no longer sitting there with assets not performing, or people can't find them, or 50% that sit there and don't get used. They're seeing a 30% reduction in waste. And I'll move down to the bottom. Largest sporting goods retailer in the US, 10% increase in revenue from athletes who receive personalized experiences because they're building the content that allows them to do that. Large home improvement company, 286% increase in the number of DIY guides completed in 1 year because they have the assets and the data that allow them to do that faster with greater efficiency. And on the consumer goods side, much of the same, a global soft drink company that's saving, $200,000 on one brand. It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you count the number of brands that they have in their portfolio, it's an enormous amount of money. They're creating dozens of designs in days versus weeks. I mean, think about that. It was taking them weeks to get things done. Now they're doing it in days. A multinational food products manufacturer, 85% increase, reduced time to market for website content globally because they're using our tools to get there. So huge success in both industries. Still a very, very long way to go. There's a lot happening, and we're here for the ride. So I'm going to now open the floor to, or turn it over to Marissa, and we can open the floor to questions.
Thank you so much, Bruce. That was a great presentation. I mean, fantastic visuals, great creative. I loved all the examples that you gave. I think great brand examples, of course, that you just shared within the previous slide or two. But a lot of the examples you gave throughout the presentation, I think were all ones that we were nodding our heads like, oh yeah, we've experienced that before. We can empathize with those. So great to see how your solutions would tie into those.
Yep.
Let's get to the Q&A, and I want to remind our audience there's still time to submit, so please keep them coming. But thanks to those who have already submitted questions to us. Let's get to the first one. Bruce, our first viewer asks, how can you encourage creative departments that are reluctant to adopt generative AI? How can you encourage them to collaborate with marketing teams to use this technology?
Oh, great question. It's interesting because creatives, from what we're learning, are pretty willing to have the conversations. So if there are barriers put up, that's interesting. But you use the word collaborate. I think that's probably the key. It's collaboration is going to be the most important way in, and then they're going to need to start collaborating with their marketing counterparts by doing their homework. They have to understand the benefits across the brand. It's not just about what creative teams can achieve using Gen AI, and we know that they anticipate enormous benefits. We recently went out and we spoke to 1,000 creatives and marketers across retail and consumer goods, and we asked them to say, if this task, which you currently do manually, was being done by Gen AI, how much time could you save? And on average, so let's just say we did 30, 40 different tasks within a creative workflow. On average, they think they can save around 40% of their time by using Gen AI. So creatives are excited about that because, like I said earlier on, is it gets them back to doing what they love to do, which is create. Take these things that I don't really want to do, automate them through Gen AI, and make them easy, get them off my plate so I can go get back to doing what I love. So creatives, I think, are there. But I think the goal for them is to make the rest of the business understand what these AI tools can do for them as well. So we talked about allowing marketers to go in and do things without having to wait for creatives to get it into their workflow. That's game changing, because normally marketers aren't allowed to touch things because, God forbid, a brand standard gets changed. And I understand it. Like I'm a marketer, I get it. But I think it's about creating an understanding of the benefits across function that will, I think, make those conversations easier, better, and more collaborative.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. That was a great explanation. Our next viewer asks, do you have any tips or suggestions for companies that are just getting started with Gen AI? Obviously this is a very hot topic, but lots of people getting started. What do you suggest?
Go back to the beginning of my deck and identify the challenges you want to solve. Look, this really is about, first of all, be excited That's sort of my first tip. This is a really, really exciting topic, and I think that what it does is, if you had seen us talk about content supply chain a year and a half ago, our story would have been different. It would have been about how do you overcome all of these challenges. Those challenges did not go away; they're still there, but we have such exciting tools to help you get there and address those challenges. So my first point is be excited, because this is a new evolutionary part of our lives, and it's just going to get better and more exciting. But I think, once you're excited, identify the challenges that you want to solve. Ask yourself the right questions. What are your key business objectives? What pain points are you seeing? How are companies in your space using Gen AI, and do you want to mirror them, or do you want to create your own path? Which data do you have available? This is a data game, right? I mean, all of these models and everything that we're talking about is built on data. So, what data do you have available, and how can you best leverage it? And then, maybe lastly, which uses of Gen AI will have the biggest impact and ROI in your business?
Mm.
And I could probably, honestly, this is probably another webinar. Is how to
Well,
get
I look
started.
forward to that. We'll put
So,
that down as the next topic.
uh,
So our next viewer, I believe this came possibly as a follow-up to when you were talking about the creatives and or the marketing team potentially changing the brand assets. Our next viewer says, do you see copyright being a concern in using Gen AI?
um, look, great question. It's interesting because, as I said, this is a new frontier, and copyright is a big topic of conversation. And what I can say is, copywriting for me relates back to the word ethics in this space. So Adobe is prioritizing ethics and how we approach Gen AI to ensure things like accountability, responsibility, transparency. And we have an ethics review board for oversight, and we're setting the tech standards for content provenance to support content authenticity. So what we're doing is allowing for automatic generation of credentials for Firefly generated images. So now creatives can add information about themselves, like their identity, their contact info, their creative process directly into the content. So it allows them to receive more recognition for their work and enhance transparency for authorship for their audience. So I think that, and I would encourage anyone who has nagging questions about that to visit adobe.com. There's a lot out there that we've published on how we're approaching ethics in this space. I've given you, I think, just a brief oversight, but or overview, but there's a lot more out there, and do your research. So copywriting will continue to be a question, but I think Adobe is leading the charge to make sure that risk is mitigated.
All right, thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Our next viewer is very curious. When using Gen AI for composite image creation, are these just for digital use, such as low-res images, or does the AI create an image that's high-res that they can use for other events or when they need that higher-res image?
My understanding is high res. So these are meant to be usable across channel, across format, in environments that are going to be customer and consumer facing. And so I would, my understanding is high res.
Okay, thank you. Bruce, we're going to take one more question today. You've
Okay.
talked about Gen AI in the context of creative development, production, and distribution today. Where else do you see Gen AI having an impact in retail and consumer goods?
So many places. Look, as I said, new frontier, lots going on, lots of exploring within companies. Gen AI can help forecast demand for products, generating predictions based on historical sales data and trends or seasonality. It can improve inventory management, reduce overstocks or even out of stocks. It has applicability in service automation, like chatbots. In consumer goods, we're seeing a lot of early adoption for innovative product development and testing. I mean, consumer goods companies are constantly looking for new products and new things to bring to market. AI's facilitating that. And we've even seen some that have been early adopters for AI in the context of advertising deployment. That's a little bit different than the creative and marketing piece. They're allowing users to use Gen AI to create some of their in-market advertising. There's an abundance of use cases that span the enterprise, but what I find really interesting is how many, if not all of them, circle back to the customer or consumer experience. And many of them become enablers of personalization. If you think about the ones I mentioned, out of stocks, chatbots, things like that, it's all about the entire enterprise getting on board with the mentality of we all own the customer experience. So how do we adopt these tools to within our role enhance that customer or consumer experience? And AI is going to have applicability across the entire enterprise. It was interesting because Marissa, when you and I were preparing for today, I think I repeated a quote from a colleague who said, Gen AI won't take your job, but if you don't know Gen AI, someone who does will. And I thought that was fascinating because it plays really nicely into this question, because everyone in the organization has to understand Gen AI. It's kind of like, what if you understand what role it can play within your professional role, you can articulate that and figure out a way to tie it back into what's going on throughout the rest of your organization.
Yeah, I think you've given us so much great information today that will hopefully make sure that that's not the
Oh,
case, that our jobs aren't taken. But it is so important to know everything that's going on in the space. We've said it countless times in today's presentation. It is one of
yeah.
the hottest topics out there. So, Bruce, thank you so much for such a great past 45 minutes or so talking about all of this great content, the great examples, the great visuals, and of course, for answering all of the questions. We so appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
So before we wrap up, I'm just going to take a moment to tell you about what's happening across eMarketer's media channels. Mark your calendars for Friday, May 3rd for our half-day live virtual summit for exclusive analyst-led sessions on thriving post-cookie, mastering retail media networks, leveraging AI in marketing, and more. Registration is open on our events page, which is emarketer.com/events. And while you're on that events page, you can also register for upcoming live analyst and more Tech Talk webinars. On the audio side of the house, don't forget to tune into Behind the Numbers, eMarketer's daily podcast. And finally, please check out our newsletters. Thank you all for your time. And thanks again to Bruce, the team at Adobe, and our eMarketer studio team behind the scenes for making this webinar possible. We'll see you all on the next Tech Talk.